Hello and welcome to Be Lifted Up, your guide to living an abundant life. I'm Eyvette Jones-Johnson, and I'm here with our special guest co-host, Dr. Michelle Boone Thornton, and we're talking about something that really relates to everybody, but certainly relates to people of faith. How can I be the change that I hope to see in the world? Listen, we've all heard that phrase. We've all, in one way or another, been called to do it, Dr. Michelle. But too often, people either don't know how to do it, or they're not sure that they found their calling or their path. You know, obviously, you found it in your life and in your profession. You know, what do you hope that we can deliver to our audience in this conversation?
One of the things that I hope we can deliver is that, one, everybody has a purpose, and two, to have the courage to take that step, to do whatever it is that God has laid on your life to do. And I think our speaker today is just a perfect person to give us some steps, some know-how, some background information so that we can move into that direction.
I totally agree with you. And to our audience, to give you a hint, we're not going to tell you her name yet, but give you the hint about what our guest is about. Focus on the word possibilities. If you're a person of faith, you believe in the possibilities, and it's your faith that takes the raw material of what I call impossibility and turns it into actuality. Faith is what transforms impossibility to reality. So we want to believe in possibilities. Listen, stay tuned. You listen to Be Lifted Up, your guide to living an abundant life. And we're going to talk about how can I be the change that I hope to see in the world. Hello and welcome back to Be Lifted Up, your guide to living an abundant life. I'm Eyvette Jones-Johnson with our guest co-host, Dr. Michelle Boone Thornton. Let me go on record, one of my favorite people. She's been on a guest on the show multiple times. So glad to have her sitting in as our co-host. So, Dr. Michelle, we're talking about, being the change we hope to see in the world. And you are living and have lived both a life-changing career and a life-changing personal life as someone who actually gets, I tell you, the business of people's happiness and health as a professional, mental health professional. So talk to me a little bit about, what drew you to your way of creating the change that you wanted to see in the world?
Well, I kind of went at it kind of backwards. I got the education. You know how you always have the feeling that you're supposed to be doing more? So you get more education, but you still feel like you're supposed to be doing more. So, you start working in different aspects of the community. But it wasn't until I really started teaching in higher ed and helping people to become the change that they wanted to see in the world that I realized my place.
Yes. And I know for me, people who know me well know this, but a lot of people don't. Despite my now, 40 plus year career as a professional journalist and media professional, I studied no journalism in college. My degree is actually in art. I'm a trained visual artist. I minored in economics, never thought I'd use it for anything. Of course, then I ended up at Black Enterprise, and it was just what I needed. God, it's funny that way. But when I realized my purpose, I said my profession is journalism, or now media, but my purpose, like you, was teaching. It was like, how do you take information and inspire people to use it to better their lives, in my case, in their business and financial lives. And once that clicked, and it doesn't click in your mind, it clicks in your spirit. It's that day when you're like, wait, this is what I really want to do every day. This is what I want to do. I know I went to school for this, and I learned that, and I studied this, and all that's all good, but this feeling, this thing in my spirit, and that's guided my career choices both during my decades at Black Enterprise and other things I do outside, when I try to decide what should I be doing with my time or not doing with my time, because possibilities are endless. But it was like, this is the way I want to bring change to the world, And it's such a blessing when you find that,
It is, because God knows how to use everything He's prepared us. Yeah. We can't figure it out, but He knows the end game. And so when we get aligned with him, the light bulb goes off, like, this is it.
Oh yeah, and I tell them that a lot of people I mentor, you know you're doing what you should be doing when you know it's going to be a bad day, but you still can't wait to get up and go get to it because it's your purpose. So listen, we can keep going on and on, but we have a great guest today who really is living that life. She's a change maker. She's an empowerment educator. She's a community innovator. I could go on and on and on, but most importantly, she is the CEO of Urban Possibilities Consulting. Please welcome to Be Lifted Up, Eyvette Jones-Johnson.
Hey, that conversation was so rich that I am so excited to be a part of it because now I'm a teacher. So I was a television producer and I thought that was my path. But I understood the power of story at a very deep level. And so I did a story that changed my life. It was for Essence. Susan Taylor, it was the last year of the Essence Awards. And I did this.
Purpose in a person.
Say that again?
You mentioned Susan Taylor. I said, speaking of power and purpose in a person.
Absolutely.
Susan Taylor would change your life.
Yeah, absolutely. That job changed my life. And so that story and the elements of that story, she wanted to make a statement. I think it was the last year of the Essence Awards. And she really wanted to make a powerful statement about social change. And that story, through many events, led me to Skid Row in Los Angeles. And I was able to pour all those things I'd learned before. You know, you learn things in different jobs and you wonder, how's this going to fit into the whole? But when you give yourself over to that bigger purpose, it all lines up. And no one could have ever told me the joy I would get out of being a teacher. And now that's what I do. I taught, my husband and I started a nonprofit empowerment writing performance on Skid Row in Los Angeles, did that for 12 years until COVID. And now I'm teaching those same things that were downloaded to me from Spirit that became my curriculum to all kinds of people. I've been teaching clergy. I've been teaching corporate folks, social change people. So what Dr. Michelle said a few minutes ago, that bigger picture you can't see, you just, as Dr. King said, just keep putting one foot in front of the other. Even if you can't see the whole staircase, keep putting one foot in front of the other. And that's what I did and continue to do, and it has been the greatest joy and adventure of my life.
You know, one of the things I learned really early, you know, and my recollection is my mother said it to me when I might have been 9 or younger than that. She said, everything you ever allow yourself to learn in this life, you will use it before you die. Now, I don't know if I understood what that meant when I was 9 or 8, and I don't even know what she meant when she said it. But I took it to mean, in my little selfish little kid way, was learn as much as you can so you can live as long as you want, you know. But it creates this mindset that said this, that it circles back to what both of you have said, that every experience that you are brought to, pleasant, unpleasant, something you like, something you don't like, makes sense to you, doesn't make sense to you, has a purpose, and just because you can't see that purpose does not mean you don't value the experience. So when we talk about being the change we want to see, it's usually not a straight line. It's not.
Never.
I want to do that. But talk about what just for our audience, what does Urban Possibilities Consulting do? I know you talked about some of the work that you're doing, who you're doing it with, but what is Urban Possibilities Consulting?
Well, we are changemaker champions. So if you want to create change, whether that's personal change or change in the world, then we're your folks. I'm your girl. Because we want to teach you practical ways to do that from joy and wholeness. instead of stress and overwhelm.
Mm.
And I know stress and overwhelm very well, right? I lived it in television for 15 years. And then even following the path that began to roll out in front of me, which was a circuitous path, right? Not a straight line. Even doing that, it wasn't straight, but I surrendered to it. I figured it out. I listened to what was downloaded to me, right? And I began to share that. And when you're doing especially social change or any kind of change you're dedicated to, when you start on that path, when you start on what Joseph Campbell called the hero's journey, right? You got to slay that dragon. You got to swim the moat. All of these things come up that eventually make you stronger, better, live in a higher energy, make the most of your life. But getting there is not easy. And so the work we do is to help people really understand for themselves and have practices in place so that they can deliver the gifts inside of them from that place, from wholeness and joy versus stress and overwhelm. And my guiding light, I love quotes, right? Because quotes, I feel like people who have done things that we imagine to do, who are brilliant, they've synthesized it for us in a couple of sentences, and it travels through time. It travels on the wind, right? And then you find it and you get that feeling where it resonates with your soul. You know what I mean?
Yes, absolutely. Hold that thought, because we're going to come back on the other side. And when you talk hope and wholeness, you're in Dr. Michelle's space. So listen, listening to Be Lifted Up, your guide to living an abundant life. We're here with Eyvette Jones-Johnson, the CEO of Urban Possibilities Consulting. I'm Alfred Edmond Jr. She's Dr. Michelle Boone Thornton, and we will be right back.
This is Be Lifted Up, and I'm Dr. Michelle Boone Thornton, and we are here with Eyvette Jones-Johnson. You just gave us a phenomenal quote. Can you share a little bit more with that?
So my North Star for the work that I do is a quote by Howard Thurman. And the quote is, "Don't ask what the world needs. Ask what makes you come alive, and go and do that. Because what the world needs are people who have come alive." And so that is the essence of my work, is to help people come alive to their gifts, come alive to the superpowers that we all are born with, come alive to our inner abundance, right? Abundance of ideas, our imagination, our creativity, abundance of joy. All of those things that help you live your best self. We're born with the seed of all of those things. So how do you tap into them? How do you live them in the world so you can be the change you want to see, right? So that's what we do at Urban Possibilities, help you again begin to come alive to your own brilliance.
And that right there in itself is just a statement to help people come alive. You know how many people feel like they're invisible, nobody sees them?
Yes,
and
I do.
You do something that is just almost like magic to help them come alive. And I like the fact that you were talking about getting to this point, like aligning with what God had for you. He giving you this download, right? Yeah. And you love teaching. And I can tell just from what you're saying that you love teaching. And I do too. And I believe that, Jesus was a master teacher, and I know I won't be able to teach like him, but the one thing I do want to teach is others to become, what they're supposed to be. And so your company does that. And the work that you do, is it a specific group that you work with? How do people connect with you?
Well, that is so interesting, Because when you are living in that place of surrender, of saying, use me,
Yes.
it shows up. I live in LA a good part of the year, and I've had connections made on hiking trails, right? In the grocery store. So I think it's important to have a clear vision of what excites your soul. And that's the key. What excites your soul? When you say yes to that, and you start to use your superpower of imagination to begin to see it as if it's done and give thanks for it, because I believe your vision, what excites your soul is so different from mine, because we all have different work to do.
Yes.
We have different gifts to give. And so I like to teach that body, mind, and spirit is one unit. We're not cut off at the neck. So what affects your mind affects your body, and both ways. What affects your body, when you get that feeling in your gut, that excitement, lean into that, because that's the place that's going to put you on that hero's journey. That's the place that's going to lift you to your best self. Because to be the change you want to see in the world, for me, the first step is inner activism, right? Getting in touch with your spirit, having awareness of your inner life, having a daily practice, being in touch with your empathy and your love and your humanness, right? Being a vessel for great things to flow through you. So that's the first part for me, is inner activism, having practices so they fill your cup. There's a lot of people running on empty.
Oh, listen, that's a word right there, because you calls to mind for me everything that you express on the outside, financially, your treatment of people in your relationships, what you wear, all of that starts on the inside.
Yes.
But so many of us are literally cut off from themselves. So I tell you, there's more to being alive than being animated and ambulatory. We think because we move and I'm alive, and I'm like, you're technically alive, but so many people move through life, and I know, Dr. Michelle, this is kind of some of the things you're addressing even in your work, that people are technically alive, but they're cut off from themselves. And if you're cut off from yourself, you don't have an intrinsic understanding and relationship with yourself. It impacts how you relate to people in the rest of the world, which means it's going to be automatically difficult for you to find, well, why am I here? Who cares that I'm here? What's my purpose? What is my value? I don't know, Dr. Michelle, am I making, too much of it, this idea of actual renewal, in a faith community?
Absolutely. And you're not making too much of it. In fact, we can't address it enough, because people are showing up just totally depleted. And then you can't give anything because you're depleted, and trying to work from a place there. And so, what Eyvette is saying and what she does to help people find their superpower. I like that word. Where's my superpower? And we really need to know where that is. You don't have any if you're depleted. I really, really like that. And she made a key point when she said, different people have different gifts. We get caught up in social media and we see, oh, that looks great. That looks great. We start running after other people's gifts. But I like how you help people hone in and understand what they have to give.
Well, I call it your standard operating equipment.
There you go.
We all come here. When you get a body, you get gifts. It's just that simple. But I think life, Einstein used to say, it was either Einstein or Picasso said, life has a way. We're born a genius, but life has a way of de-geniusing you. And so we are so, as Alfred said, disconnected. So how do you be the change when you're not connected to the treasure inside yourself?
Yes.
Success is an inside job, right? But so many of us look for success and validation, and I was one of those in the outside world. Do I get that promotion? What ratings did my story get when I was on? I'd run to work and look at the overnight ratings. Like, how did my story rate last night? Like, those are the kinds of things that drove me until you have, for so many of us, for me, there is some defining kind of moment. And then it changes your perspective and makes you look at yourself and your life differently. Or sometimes I also had that nagging, is this all there is?
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
And I tried to stuff it for so many years. More work, more stories, bigger promotion. But that feeling does not go away, because when spirit is speaking to you, it's not going to leave you alone. You're going to feel it, and you're not going to feel good because you're stuffing it or not listening to it. That's been my experience.
I'm wrapping up a book that I started reading actually before it started the Christmas holidays. I'm just finishing it, called Build the Life You Want. I know Oprah Winfrey is one of the co-authors. I forgot who the other author is. But it speaks. Say it again.
Brooks.
That's right. And it's so the book. There's a part that speaks into happiness being tied to intrinsic reward, not extrinsic reward. And so many of us who have been successful in our careers, and we reach that point, and we're like, is that all there is? And it's because we have built our lives around, how much am I getting paid? Am I getting a raise this year? Did I get an award? Am I, are people impressed with my title in my office and those rewards have their place, but they're extrinsic. But to find your purpose and your happiness and joy means cultivating intrinsic reward. And that just speaks to everything you just said, and even you, Dr. Michelle, around health, happiness, hope, joyfulness, and wholeness. Listen, again, we're really getting to the nitty gritty of what it means to be the change you want to see. This is Be Lifted Up, your guide to living an abundant life. I'm here with my co-host, Dr. Michelle Boone Thornton, and we're having a very powerful conversation with Eyvette Jones-Johnson, CEO of Urban Possibilities Consulting. We will be right back.
Welcome back to Be Lifted Up, your guide to living an abundant life. And we are talking with Eyvette Jones-Johnson. She has just been laying out the nuggets, one after another. And I understand her vision and what she's doing to empower others. And the way she has it set up, she can only empower you to be all that you have been created to be. She talked about joy and wholeness. Can you give me a little bit more around that joy and wholeness? Because I know about the stress. Tell me about the joy and wholeness.
Well, when you have daily practices that fill you up, you give from a different place. You're not scattered and all over the place. So, it's the familiar saying of give from a full cup. I like to preach or teach that you give from an overflowing cup. When you give from an overflowing cup, what you can give to the world is so much more. You begin to, because the treasure is inside, not outside, you begin to have a different kind of way of walking in the world and being in the world, right? You open up those superpowers that I talked about before, so that you're not in different pieces all over the place. So I'm a big believer, and I always teach about a daily practice, because you pour out every day, so you need to pour in first. My mother used to say, Have a daily practice because it sets your rudder for the day. And it's so true. So for me, wholeness and joy is saying yes to the things that excite my soul. You know, our bodies have um, mechanisms that give us signals. So you know how you see something or you experience something and all the endorphins and you feel so excited about it? That's a neon sign. Go that way, right? Go that way. And so many times I always talk about, think about the why and the what you want, the what you're being attracted to, the what that resonates with you, and leave the how on the side for a little while. Just dwell in the what. See it, feel it, experience it. You get to experience what you want multiple times because you can dream about it every day, right? You can think about it every day before the path starts to unfurl to lead you in that direction.
You know, it's so important for people to understand. And again, it's interesting. The topic of the show is how to affect change on the outside. But we're making a very important point is that that doesn't happen consistently, if at all, without starting from the change on the inside. So we're talking about joy and wholeness and what you allow to be poured into you. And, you know, like you said, I tell a lot of my mentees, find your why. When you figure out you can't do it, it's usually because your why is not important enough. But when you find your why, like you said, the how and the other stuff will work itself out because your why is what will keep you going. So I'm really fascinated about this whole understanding that what you've done, what you've discovered for yourself, one, and what you give to the various clients of Urban Possibilities is a framework, a practical framework. Like you said, practices. We're talking about a practice. During the pandemic, and again, I'm talking about someone who thinks thought I had a practice. Again, educated, financial journalist, successful. And then the pandemic shut down, and the isolation of that actually opened the window of opportunity for me to really develop a real daily practice. Meaning, yeah, I was raised in the church. Yeah, I prayed, but I kind of prayed in the margins. Yeah, I'm scared. Let me pray. I got a minute. Let me pray. About to eat when we. But I went from that, and I won't bore you guys with the whole evolution of my transition, to now literally I have a physical prayer corner in my house. And I wake up and I'm like, get up. And, you know, this is a rough approximation of what I do every morning. Get up, stumble to the prayer corner sometimes, do my little prayer. It doesn't have to be a long one or a short one. Then get up, go on my front porch, on my backyard deck, and take a deep breath of air. You know, these things that when you were running and gunning and no, I got to get to the train and I got to do this, I got to do that, I got to do that. And you're right. It's like driving your car and never taking it to the gas station until it runs out on the highway because, you know, and I was like, no, I got to go to the gas station every day. Because like you said, whether you do it voluntarily or people take it from you, you're going to be pouring out every day. So I'm just loving how we're talking about what you allow to be poured into yourself so that you can not only find your purpose, but you can fulfill that purpose.
Well, I think the rule number one of social action is, and change work is inner work. That's the first part of it. Because if you don't do that work and you take your brokenness, I had a nonprofit on Skid Row for 12 years. So I saw very clearly where people were looking for something on the outside and they would come to us and they thought we were the solution. But they brought sometimes chaos. They put more stuff on our plates, right? Because they didn't have inner awareness. They weren't whole. So our job initially, that's how Urban Possibilities was born, on Skid Row in Los Angeles. We taught homeless job seekers, right? That's a big job.
Yes, it is.
So if you come and you want to affect change and we resonate with you, homeless job seekers is something, oh, in my gut, yeah, I want to help that. then do the inner work so you don't create more work for those people that you seek to help because you're looking for something on the outside. Do the inner work. And it was very stark for us. People who did the inner work came, contributed, they had creativity, they lifted us. People who were unconscious, living unconsciously,
I like that.
who thought we could be a solution for them, they came and they created for us often more challenges.
Yeah, I'm a proponent of that inner work. Absolutely. And the thing that resonates with me, and I hope all the listeners write it down, is the treasure is inside. A lot of times we're looking for stuff that we already have within us. And I like that you help people understand that fact and build from that place.
Yeah, because what the world is waiting for is for you to make the most of your life and share that. What the world is waiting for is for you to share those gifts you've been given by the Creator. What the world is waiting for is for you to release that hero inside of you so that we can move the needle, especially in our communities where we need it most. Come, say yes to it, say yes to the challenges, but come from a higher place so that you can lift up those that you're in contact with. And the things you get in return, oh my goodness, it's a laundry list. You get so much when you give, not only from a physical and emotional standpoint, right? Now there are studies that show that it lowers depression and stress. It helps with self-esteem and anxiety and depression, right? You get those endorphins I talked about before because our bodies are talking to us all the time too. So this is about listening in, listening to yourself, and giving that gift to the world, being that change in the world.
You know, I was once told that we were created to be vessels, not containers. And I was like, what do you mean by that? Because we think they're the same thing. They said, no, vessels are meant to be poured into and poured out of. Containers are meant to just contain things. And if you are a container, you're not giving anything to the world and you're not getting anything from the world. But all forms of wealth require flow. And wealth is flowed through vessels. And that's whether you talk about blood, whether it's about thoughts, whether you talk about money, that it's not wealth if it's not circulating. And that whole thought process turned my whole mindset around, even with the things, not even that I started doing things differently, but I started doing things with a different mindset that made purpose matter in a way that it didn't before I learned that. So again, we're here with my guest host, Michelle Boone Thornton, Dr. Michelle Boone Thornton. We are with our guest, Eyvette Jones-Johnson of Urban Possibilities Consulting. You listen to Be Lifted Up, your guide to living an abundant life, and we will be right back. Hello and welcome back to Be Lifted Up, your guide to living an abundant life, where we've been talking about how you, not just us, but we can be the change that we hope to see in the world as individuals and as a collective. And, you know, my guest host, Dr. Michelle Boone Thornton, who's always amazing. And then we have the amazingness of our guest, Eyvette Jones-Johnson, CEO of Urban Possibilities Consulting. And listen, Eyvette, you have just dropped gems and mics all episode. But, you know, always, you know, when I was in college, what I learned was you only remember the last thing the professor said before you leave the class. So as a teacher, I've learned to like make sure I get that last big thing and that I don't want them to forget. But if there's like one just important thing you want the audience to take away from this conversation and your work and your experiences, talk to me about what that one thing might be.
Well, one thing is, you know, that is difficult, but I'll try, right? Because This journey we're talking about, this inner activism and outer activism and being the change you want to see in the world, is a very layered kind of conversation, right? But one thing I thought of when you mentioned that, well, it's two things. One is when you talked about be a vessel. That's how I always describe things. That's how I teach to my students. Be a vessel for something bigger than yourself, right? And do the inner work, because the inner work is going to give you happiness and dividends and joy. You're not going to find it in the outside world. We're mesmerized by the outside world, but the inner journey is where all the juice is, right? That's where you get what you need for that outer journey. So you really can be the change in the world. And the other thing is, I love and revere Harriet Tubman. To do what she did is mind-boggling to me, right? And so she had a quote that was, "I took thousands of slaves to freedom. I could have taken thousands more if they knew they were slaves." So what are you a slave to, right? We've got shackles of all kinds, right? But that's not how you're meant to live, right? You're meant to give the gifts you were born with. Get that out, because our time on earth is short. Get on that path. Start that journey and prove it for yourself. There are all kinds of people telling us, including me, trying to shine a light for you to see certain things, but the best thing to do is to road test it. Go road test it for yourself. Get some information and then go and road test it. And the other thing is, I have been since COVID, I was asked to start teaching at a seminary, and I was teaching clergy, those with masters and PhDs in theology. So from Skid Row for 12 years to that, now we know what that is. That was not me, right? That was not me.
Right.
And here's the beauty of it. When you surrender, and that's what I've learned. That's what I learned during COVID, was really, for myself, a mechanism to surrender, because so many things were happening. I was losing my nonprofit because people couldn't operate on Skid Row, something that was my purpose and my passion. I came to Chicago, and I'd planned to be here just a week for my mother's birthday, and she collapsed, and I ended up being here almost 3 years taking care of her, right? So everything, the ground came out from under me, like it did for everyone else too, right? Isolated and all of those things. And it was so big for me that I was like, I just gave it up. And I just said, God, just use me. My minister was the late Reverend Della Reese.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
And I was traveling. I was doing specials for CBS. And I was traveling, and this one time I came back in town, and she talked about the most powerful prayers, because I had been in Europe and other places, and I still had that "is this all there is" feeling, right? So I go to church, and she said the most powerful prayers are the short ones. Use me, help me, guide me. And so this whole journey started for me not being aware, being totally committed to my career, not being aware and conscious. And I started saying that, use me. And next thing I know, I get a call from Susan Taylor and her team to do this show. This show changes my life. I ended up leaving TV and teaching on Skid Row, finding my joy in that, like my real purpose. But things began to unfold. And so the one thing I would say is know that you are tied to something so much bigger than yourself. So much bigger. And if you get in touch with that source, you get in touch with that spirit, you work for it to use you as a vessel, you got to hold on, because it's not all going to be roses, but it's giving you the lessons you need to be the best person you can be. It's going to make you use every gift you have and reach for more, right? You do have to slay that dragon. You do have to swim that moat. There are going to be people who come against you. But when you stand in your inner treasure, you will make it through. And when you make it through, you're going to be so much better than when you started. The energy of my life now versus television, totally different. My joy, totally different. All of it. My synchronicity in my life, totally activated. So I tell people, get on this train.
Get on this train. Dr. Michelle, I also spend a lot of time, and you just hit on it, Eyvette, the difference between focusing on source versus resource. You say when somebody's cultivating a tree, but we're focused on the resources again. We're focused on what we get.
Yep.
And it's like, but the farmer who wants a productive tree is not spending all this time polishing the apples. They're nourishing the tree. And so this whole idea of source versus resource, Dr. Michelle, I mean, I think Eyvette is just...
She's just phenomenal. And, one of the things she was saying in her story was, she had to give it to God, because God will let you do it. But the problem is you don't know what you're doing because you don't know his plan. That's the real problem. And it's just so beautiful how she put it. And, everything that we're looking for extrinsically is in us. We're bringing it to the table. We have to give the gift of ourselves to the world. And I just think that's beautiful. I really do.
Listen, before we run out of time, I want you to make sure our audience knows where to find you, your socials, your website, so that, because again, we never get it all in the show. There's so much more, but we want people to continue to benefit from your wisdom and your work.
So you can find me on Facebook, a new IG that I'm creating, LinkedIn, and then also I'm the co-founder of Brush Harbor Retreats for Clergy of Color.
Wow.
Because we have particular things that we should focus on as clergy of color, and we pour out all the time. So look for the Brush Harbor Retreats for Clergy of Color, if that is something that speaks to you as well.
Well, it speaks to the show, it speaks to us. And should we find you under Urban Possibilities Consulting, under Eyvette Jones-Johnson?
Eyvette Jones-Johnson for now.
Okay. Excellent, excellent. Listen, everybody. Woo! I'm going to listen to this show a couple more times myself, and I was on it. So that's how deep this show is. Eyvette, thank you so much for being our guest on Be Lifted Up. So happy that we all three got to reconnect with you. You're a living, breathing embodiment of what we strive to do with Be Lifted Up Radio. And Dr. Michelle, I know, I want to give you a chance to say your thanks as well.
Just phenomenal, and refreshing, because we don't think about, we're the answer. We never think about that. We're looking everywhere else. Thank you for sharing that with us today.
Well, it has been my joy. We could talk another 3-4 hours if it was up to me.
Thanks.
Because we are Be Lifted Up Radio. When I just heard the name and the theme about abundance, I said, that's my tribe. Like, that's the conversation. I want to be there. I want to be in the mix with people who are serving in that way. So I am so joyful, so thankful, so grateful. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you for allowing us to be your hosts. This is Be Lifted Up, your guide to living an abundant life. I'm Alfred Edmond Jr. I'm here with my guest co-host, Dr. Michelle Boone Thornton. We just thank you for joining us, and we will see you next time. Man, that was a powerful, powerful episode, a powerful, powerful guest. I mean, there's so much we could take away, but Dr. Michelle, what do you take away from everything that Eyvette Jones-Johnson shared on the show?
Absolutely. It was like she was dropping so many nuggets, and some of that stuff was hitting home. You know what I'm saying? When she talked about just doing the inner work, and people are just struggling, trying to find joy and happiness, and you got to do the inner work because that's where it is. She talked about, the treasures inside, not outside, and how we're running around trying to make things happen that are never going to happen until we fix us. I thought it was just how her story, where she said she had to give it to God. And then, once he took it, because he knows the plan, it just all made sense to her. She was just phenomenal. Everything she dropped was a golden piece.
Dr. Michelle, I've learned this myself. The only thing worse than chasing what you want and never getting it is getting it and finding out it's not enough. And you have so many people who are successful and they chase and they chase and they find out, no, this isn't it. And then they chase and they find, well, that's not it. And
yeah.
I thought that relationship was going to be it, or that person was going to be it, or that job was going to be it. And like you said, we're chasing, but it's sad. It may be sad when you don't catch it, but the sadder is when you do catch it and it's not enough. So listen,
Absolutely.
guys, this is the episode you're going to want to have on repeat. I'm Alfred Edmond Jr. You want to catch this episode of Be Lifted Up at beliftedupradio.com. That's the letter B, liftedupradio.com. And follow us on all social platforms, again, at the letter B, Lifted Up Radio. I'm Alfred Edmond Jr. with our special guest host, Dr. Michelle Boone Thornton. Thank you for joining us. God bless you, and we'll see you next time.